Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. I want to welcome everyone to the Toro Law Center for tonight's presentation, Understanding the Fema Sandy Claims Review Process. And it's brought to you in collaboration with Adopt-A-House and the Office of the Senator Gillibrand's office. So I'd like to introduce first Michelle Insignia of Adopt-A-House.
Hi guys, nice to see you tonight and thanks for coming. I'm Michelle Insinger of Adopt-A-House. As you guys know me, we're a nonprofit helping with Sandy survivors since the storm, November 2012 actually. We do a lot of work both on the individual cases and working with our Toro and our politicians to help create change and change of policy, and also help those on the individual level as much as we possibly can. So we're very grateful that you guys came here tonight, and for those watching, to understand the FEMA reopening of the claims. And I appreciate you guys coming, and thanks, and see you later. Bye. Thanks.
Thank you. We are also fortunate enough to bring you this presentation in collaboration with the Office of the Senator, Kirsten Gillibrand. We have two staff members here with us today, Regional Director Deborah Teneranello and Regional Assistant Melanie Sinesi. And their contact information will be provided as well. It's located up on the screen, and they've also left some business cards out on the front table, so you can contact their office as well for any assistance that you may need. Okay. As Leaf said, my name is Melissa Luckman. I'm a 2010 Toro alum, and it's great to be back, giving back to the local communities in Nassau and Suffolk County. Here, I am a staff attorney in the Disaster Relief Clinic. We provide various assistance for any kind of Sandy-related work. So if it's a FEMA recoupment, contractor dispute, obviously the FEMA review process, anything that you can need assistance with related to Sandy, we're here for you. So please feel free to reach out to us. When you first walked in, you're provided with an index card. And as I said before, if you need legal assistance, any of these areas, or anything else related to Sandy, you can write down your name, address, phone number, email, best contact information for you, and me and the other staff attorney will be collecting those index cards in a few minutes, and we'll be reaching back out to you during the week. On the other side of the index card, you can write down one question or concern that you have about the review process, and we are going to try to answer as many of those questions here for you tonight during the second part of our Q&A session. We just want to let you know, with this presentation and any advice we give tonight, it's just for educational purposes. We're not your attorney of record, but of course, if you do need additional assistance, you are welcome to contact us on an individual basis for help. Our presentation tonight is going to address understanding your coverages and limits, the review process for Hurricane Sandy claims, the document submission, because the documentation standard has been very rough and it's been different for every homeowner, so we're hoping to standardize that for everyone here tonight and everyone else that you speak with. And we're also going to address the duplication of benefits analysis, which I believe is a large concern for many homeowners. So we are going to get started with understanding your policy coverage and limits. On the screen in front of you is an example of a flood insurance policy declaration sheet. And as you can see, on the bottom left portion, there's coverage that's broken down into two categories. There's building coverage, which has a maximum recovery of $250,000, and there's contents coverage, which has a maximum recovery of $100,000. This policy has actual zero contents coverage. So if you were this homeowner, you wouldn't be able to recover any contents proceeds from your flood insurance claim. If you don't have a copy of your policy or your deck sheet that was in effect at the time of Sandy, we recommend you getting a copy of that and knowing your coverages now before you get involved in the review process. Not all homeowners know what contents coverage they have, how much. You need to know these numbers because those are the maximum amounts for recovery. What is covered under the policy? I've been asked this by a lot of homeowners. Not everybody knows. This is very important. The National Flood Insurance Policy only covers damage caused directly by the flood. And that, I know, has been a very aggravating statement to hear because they don't understand. You can't replace half a wall. You can't replace half a piece of wood. This is how the policy reads. So this is what we need to be aware of and be conscious of when, again, going back into this review process. What are some building items that are covered under your policy? Your electrical and plumbing system, water heaters, any built-in appliances, refrigerators, stoves. This is all taken directly from your policy as well, and I'm going to show you where that's located in the policy. What's covered under contents coverage? Contents coverage are your personal belongings, your clothing, shoes, jackets, electronic equipment, your iPods, your DVD players, portable window air conditioners, portable microwaves and ovens. Basically, any appliance that's not a built-in appliance would be considered a content. Any built-in appliances would fall under the building or the structure portion. Your washers and dryers, and then they have some limits as far as furs, collectibles, antiques. Those all have a max policy coverage of $2,500. What damages are not covered under your policy? Anything caused by moisture, mildew, mold, anything that could have been avoided had you mitigated the circumstances directly after the storm. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this from adjusters previously when you've submitted your claim. This again is taken directly from the flood insurance policy. Any financial loss, if you had a business in your home, is not covered under the National Flood Insurance Policy. Loss of use or access or rental assistance, none of that is covered under your typical NFIP flood insurance policy. Another area of concern where people have a lot of questions and they don't understand the coverage limitations are in basements. Flood insurance coverage is limited in areas below the lowest elevated floors, which are crawl spaces, basements, a walkout basement, sometimes they're referred to. Any livable space that's below ground level is considered a basement for purposes of the flood insurance policy. Those items that are covered, which are very limited, and they're specifically set forth in the policy as well, your foundation, central air conditioners, again, a permanent fixture such as a washer and dryer, your furnace. Those items that are not included in a basement would be any of your personal contents, clothing, bookshelves, any decorative items that you may have had. This is now building or structure coverage we've been talking about. This has a maximum recovery of the $250,000, and this is an actual snapshot taken from the flood insurance policy itself. So all of you should have access to one of these. If you have an insurance broker or if you call your insurance company, they should be able to provide you with a copy. We'll also be putting copies of all relevant documentation up on our website as well, so you can view everything there. This is a snapshot of coverage B, which again is the personal property. And you'll see under paragraph 6, there's special limits. And these are the categories that flood insurance won't pay more than $2,500 for. Rare books, jewelry, watches that aren't separately insured, artwork, photographs, furs, and any business property. Again, if you have any specific questions as to coverage, it's suggested that a copy of your policy be requested and obtained from your insurance provider. What I want to move on to now is, why most people are here tonight, and it's going through this new Sandy claims review process. We are going to walk through each step one by one. This was a notice released by Fema. Some of you may have gotten this, some may not, but we're going to go through each step in detail, and then we can address any questions or concerns afterwards. The initial outreach by Fema started on May 15th, and they sent out the first batch of 144,000 notices to policyholders who submitted a claim for damages from Hurricane Sandy. These first batch of notices that went out were prioritized to homes that had engineering issues. So if you haven't received a formal notice, you will be getting one. And you actually don't need a formal notice to start your review process. Initially, FEMA had wanted to skew the notices, but they've released a lot of ways to get in touch with them. This is the notice if you have received it. It's a 3-page letter basically advising you of your right, saying that you did file a claim, because for this review process, you must have filed a claim after the storm. These are not for new claims that the insurance companies are not aware of. These are to review claims that were previously submitted and that you feel were paid incorrectly, underscoped, or for whatever issue. Maybe there was an engineering issue that wasn't addressed, so they're on existing claims. Policyholders can reach out to FEMA to request their file be reviewed by various forms. And all this contact information is located on that checklist that was provided to you when you walked in. So you don't need to take down all this information, but there's a phone number, a fax number, there's a mailing address, and an actual street address if you prefer to mail your request to them. So all this information is provided on that checklist. They've also provided a website, and if you go to that website, you can download a request form. In front of you this is a copy of the request form. It basically requires just some basic information: the policyholder's name, address, your current mailing address if you've moved or if your mailing address has changed, if you haven't gone home since the storm, your insurance carrier, the policy number, and your claim number. And you can take this downloaded form, you can submit it to them via email, fax. Again, you have the option to mail it to them as well. If you call the NFIP Claims Review Center, which is what they're calling this hub for the review process, you're going to be asked a series of qualifying questions related to your policy. The purpose of these intake questions is just to ensure that your claim does in fact stem from Hurricane Sandy. This is not being opened up at this time to any other claims from Irene or Lee or for any other natural disasters. They just want to make sure that they're screening people correctly so that the people who do have true claims can actually get through this process in a quick amount of time without being bogged down with people who don't have actual claims. If you are found to be eligible, FEMA will assign your file to an expert adjuster, which they're also referring to as a caseworker. And this call center is going to forward all collected data to the claims processing team. That processing team is going to request your file from your insurance carrier. You don't need to do that for them. You don't need to provide them with a copy of your initial claim file. FEMA will request it, send it to this review office. They've advised us that they're expecting to receive those files in a 2-day time frame. So we are hoping that that stays true and that claim files are provided that quickly. You will be made aware of when FEMA has received your claim file. So you don't need to wonder, do they have it, do they not, is there some kind of issue? They'll be in constant communication with you via telephone and via mail confirmation. So your file is going to be assigned to an adjuster worker. Any claim that had an engineering issue will be assigned to an engineer that will be reviewing your claim. I know there's been a lot in the media for engineering companies, and there's some skepticism. None of those companies are going to be used, we've been assured. These are going to be all engineering companies that had no prior nexus or any allegations of fraud or misdoings previously with the Sandy claims. You are going to have the same caseworker throughout this entire process. So it'll provide a point of stability. They'll be aware of who you are. You're not just going to be a number to them. They're going to know you by name, your file. They're going to be reviewing your file. They'll know what documentation is still needed. They'll know exactly what you have in your file, so there'll be no question. From the date that you speak with this new caseworker, they're giving a period of 14 days to submit any new documentation. So if you have a new contractor's estimate, or if you have additional receipts that weren't provided when you initially submitted your claim, they're giving a 14-day window to submit that, which we've been told will be able to be emailed to the caseworker. So for some people that's convenient, you can scan an email or you can mail documents. They are trying to make this as homeowner friendly as possible, is what we've been told. The caseworker and the engineers are going to verify that your file has all necessary documentation for a thorough review. And from that date of initial contact, we've been told there's a 90-day turnaround time. So you're looking at 3 months for the full 90 days for complete requesting the file, complete review of the file, and hopefully an additional payment made on your claim. What documentation should you be providing for this review? Now, this is a non-comprehensive list, and don't feel required to submit all of this documentation. You do have the option of just confirming with your caseworker that all these documents are in your claim file, but we're recommending to submit is, again, photographs of the damage, contractor's invoices, actual receipts if you have any, public adjuster estimates. If you took out an SBA loan, you may have an SBA report that details out the damage to your home if you had a structure or even a contents SBA loan. And the homeowner has the option to request a reinspection at no cost to the homeowner. So if you haven't done any work to your home or minimal work and you want them to actually come see your property again as part of the re-review, that is your option. You can tell the caseworker, and again, that's at no charge to the homeowner. We are also advising people to basically have a statement detailing out the additional funds that you're looking for. You know, what's your coverage? How much were you paid? How much more do you feel you're entitled to? What documentation do you have to substantiate that? You're not required to submit this form. It's just the more you submit to them and the easier you spell this out, we're hoping that it'll be that much easier for them to cut additional payments. For homeowners that don't have any additional documentation, FEMA will accept an affidavit submitted by the homeowner only covering up to $7,500. So if you have some documentation for out-of-pocket expenses, maybe you can submit an affidavit for $7,500 on top of that. We've asked that and we haven't gotten a formal response, but we're hoping that, again, as much documentation is submitted, that it'll just increase your additional payment that you're entitled to. If someone's going to be assisting you with this review process, I know a lot of elderly people have their children helping them or friends or attorneys, we're advising to submit a third-party authorization form up front. The authorization form, and I have a sample coming up for you, will basically just allow your caseworker to speak to somebody else on your file that's not listed as the policyholder. Now, this is an example for a statement of additional funds requested. What we've done in this example is we've basically listed out what the structure coverage is, what was previously paid on the policy, how much is remaining on the policy, because again, you can't be paid over coverage limits, and then what we actually have documented. So in this case, we had contractor invoices for labor, we had actual receipts for materials, so we added up our out-of-pocket costs, we presented a demand of what we were looking for. Some other important information to include on this sheet would be, are you substantially damaged? Do you have a substantial damage letter and where you paid a very small amount of money, which I know happened to a lot of homeowners? Has your house been demoed since the date of Sandy? Do you no longer have a house for someone to inspect or to get a proposal or an estimate for work to be completed? Were you one of those homes that had a suspect engineering report? I would let FEMA know this right up front. We have been advised that the engineering cases will most likely take precedence over the cases being reviewed due to all the allegations of fraud against the engineering companies. So you definitely want to let them know up front if you had a suspect engineering report. And you also should include how a check for settlement would be made. So if you have a mortgage on your house, your mortgage holder is going to be included if it's a structure payment. If you have an SBA loan, SBA may be included. If it's an SBA loan for structure and you receive a structure payment, they're going to be listed as a payee. The more information you give up front, we're hoping the smoother this process will be for everybody. This is an example of a third-party authorization form. And again, it basically just states that your caseworker can speak with somebody else that's not a named policyholder on your file. Due to privacy laws, they'll only speak with anyone named. So if you're helping your parents or friends, someone out of state, you should submit one of these at the outset. Following a review of all submitted documentation, the caseworker is going to make a recommendation for the amount of payment or decide that no additional payment should be made on the claim. If you as the homeowner and the policyholder disagree with the caseworker's recommendation, you have the opportunity to utilize a neutral third party to assist in making the final recommendation. After you request a neutral on your file, they will review the file and contact you to discuss any concerns that you have for the initial caseworker's recommendation. The neutral will examine the information on the file, they'll ask questions of you and your caseworker, and a hearing can be held if you'd like. It's at the homeowner's request. So if you'd like to have a hearing with you, the caseworker, and this neutral, that's something that can be done at your request as well. The neutral party is going to make a recommendation to Fema, and we've been advised that Fema will be giving substantial weight to this neutral party's recommendation. So all additional payments that will be made, there shouldn't be any questions of deceptive practices as happened previously, and they want homeowners to know that you really are getting a fair shot and a fair review during this new claims process. After your claim is reviewed, the policyholder will be notified of the results by phone and in writing. They're going to require you to sign a proof of loss form. Many of you have already signed those previously. The caseworkers will most likely be preparing those as a courtesy. You can prepare your own. If you choose to work with an attorney, you can have an attorney prepare one for you. You don't need to sign the one prepared by the caseworker, but they will most likely prepare one as a courtesy. And if you agree with it after a review and can ensure that it's accurate, you can sign that for submission. Payment will be made and the process will be completed. This is a sample of a proof of loss form for anyone who hasn't seen one or signed one. A proof of loss form basically has your basic policy information, and it's a document that's signed and sworn to under penalty of perjury that you're signing that this is in fact correct information and that you are entitled to those additional proceeds. Now that this review has been complete, and assuming that an additional payment will be made, the next issue we need to address is the duplication of benefits. And what is a duplication? Let's take a look at a New York Rising duplication of benefits table. I'm going to assume that many of you have New York Rising or have applied to and maybe having some issues with them as well. So many of you have seen this duplication of benefits table before. Before you enter into this review process, if you're not in possession of your most recent award letter from New York Rising, we're suggesting contacting your individual case managers and requesting a copy. Those numbers seem to change often, so we'd like you to have the most updated and correct information when making a decision as to going back into this review process. And as you can see on this table, the fourth line down is the NFIP building, which refers to proceeds received under building coverage or coverage A of the National Flood Insurance Policy. This means that any additional structure funds that you receive as a result of this review process will be added to your current duplication of benefits. An easy way to determine if this process will provide you with any funds is to make sure that you can potentially receive flood insurance structure proceeds that are above your total New York Rising award. So if your current New York Rising award is $50,000 and you can only receive an additional $15,000 through this review process, those funds are going to be considered duplication. If your current New York Rising award is $50,000 and you can receive a potential $100,000 through this new review process, only that first $50,000 would be a duplication. The duplication of benefits is a conversation being held with the state, with HUD, with New York Rising, with FEMA, and there may be changes on this in the future, but as of today, the FEMA review process is open, and this is how the duplication of benefits analysis is today. We're hoping there'll be some movement in the future and that these funds won't be duplicated. Maybe there'll be some exclusions, but as of right now, there hasn't been an official decision on that. Next, excuse me. Yeah, let's just hold some questions until the end because we're live streaming as well. So let's just get through the presentation, and then if you write your question on your cards, actually, Christina, can you just walk around and collect those cards so we can address any questions afterwards? Thank you. So let's move on to the duplication of benefits and SBA loans. What is an SBA loan? An SBA loan is a post-disaster assistance provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration to help repair or replace damaged items or property. Because it's disaster assistance, this is once again one of those areas for duplication of benefits. An SBA loan can be taken just for structure, just for contents, or for both. So again, it's imperative that you know your actual numbers. Request a copy of your SBA file. It'll have a breakdown similar to the New York Rising ECR. There'll be a structure breakdown of the allocation of funds for structure, as well as a breakdown for contents. So you will know exactly where the overlap is. Now we're going to move on to contents or personal property claim. Contents proceeds are not considered duplication for purposes of New York Rising. So if there is room for you to get additional funds for your contents under your flood insurance policy, it's recommended that you definitely have your file reviewed, maybe submit additional photographs, additional receipts, anything you may have, as that is easy money in your pocket. They are, however, considered duplication of benefits for the purposes of SBA only if you received an SBA loan for those same contents. So there won't be an exact duplication. It will have to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, and there'll have to be a review of the breakdown of proceeds provided. Submission of a contents claim should provide as much information as possible. We suggest creating an Excel spreadsheet. Some insurance companies have formats that you can download, or if you Google it, you may find some other format online. But we suggest having an Excel spreadsheet, keeping everything organized, having organized headlines, and accompanying documentation such as photographs numbered in a specific way for easy reference. As you can see here, we have an Excel spreadsheet, and our headlines are brand, item description, location where in the house where it was destroyed, an image number, the quantity lost, the item's age, and their replacement cost. On the top of the submission, you also want to have all important information regarding your policy number, claim number, the policyholder's address. It's very important, if you're going to submit a contents claim, do not write miscellaneous or assorted of any item. They will not pay on that. It's just going to lead to more frustration and aggravation. And although it's more time consuming and this far out, you shouldn't be required to document every item that was destroyed 2.5 years ago. It has to be if you want to receive payment for it. So every item just has to be separated out, lamp, shades, a hamper, cotton blankets, anything. There can't be assorted or miscellaneous. It won't be paid on. Also, we've suggested here there's an image number column. So we've suggested creating a document, if you can, or just submitting photographs and just numbering them in some way so that when you submit them for review, they're easy referenceable. You can say, look, here's item number 1. It corresponds with photograph number 1. This was my item. This is damaged. You can submit comparable photographs with prices if you don't have actual photographs, but that will not guarantee you payment. We are 2.5 years out. We've been told they're going to be a little bit more lenient. I wouldn't submit comparables for every item. I would try and see what photographs you do have. But again, as a last resort, you can use comparable photographs with prices. And you also can submit an affidavit, again, for contents. So you can submit an affidavit for structure up to $7,500, and we've been advised for contents for up to $7,500 as well. Some information you want to put in is your policy and claim number, why you don't have any photographs, was everything washed away? Have you still not been home? Has your house been demolished? Is there some other reason? Just provide them with the information so they understand that you don't have anything else. You're submitting this affidavit in lieu of other supporting documentation. with the hopes that they will pay on it as they've advised us that they have. So this concludes the PowerPoint presentation part of our presentation. We're going to get into a Q&A session with those questions that you've written on your cards. Does anyone have any questions that they've written down? Because Christina's going to come around and collect them so we can address those. We can start while Christina's collecting those with the questions that you brought up. When you get your settlement check, there will be another adjustment report. So if you are not paid twice for the same exact item, that is going to you're going to have to go through that report and just make sure that when New York Rising, because what New York Rising is going to do is they're going to take that one lump sum and they're going to duplicate it out for structure. You're going to have to go through that report, highlight it, notate it, put it in a letter, make it very easy for them to understand that you're not in fact being paid on those same items, that flood insurance covered separate items that New York Rising paid for. Otherwise, unfortunately, right now, they will be considered a duplication of benefits. Do you want to?
Basic question. Let me ask you then.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Turn your thing on.
It's on. Hello. All right, I'll be your voice. The first question, which I'm sure everyone is worried about and concerned about, which is why this process is going to be painstaking, is what if FEMA finds you were overpaid?
So FEMA has advised us that if you do go into the review process and if you were overpaid, that they will be forced to recapture those funds initially paid to you. They are estimating this to be 2% of all claims submitted. I can't tell you where they got that number from. I mean, if you look at your claim, you know what you're paid and you know what you should have been paid based on documentation that you have. Just be realistic on your file before you submit it. And in the event that you do think maybe an adjuster came and maybe he did overpay you in the eyes of FEMA, that you should be wary of that recapture fact if you do go into the review process.
This is a mix of both, but I think it's still important. Is $30,000 ICC from flood policy considered DOB from New York Rising? Sorry. Is $30,000 ICC from flood policy considered DOB for New York Rising?
Okay, so New York Rising, there's the two different programs, right? You're in repair or reconstruction. If you're in reconstruction, your award is one basic lump sum that basically includes the demolition and reconstruction of your house and elevation. So any proceeds that you get from flood, including that ICC money, would be considered a duplication of benefits unless that ICC money was used for another purpose. ICC does not only need to be used for elevation. If you look in the clause in the policy, it can also be used for demolition, and I know a lot of people did use it for the demo. That you need to provide proof of to New York Rising, and that will not be duplicated out. If you're in the repair program, your award is broken down into two portions, the repair and the elevation. So if you collect the ICC funds, that ICC will be deducted only from the elevation award that you were given. It will not have an effect on the repair award that you were given for your house.
Was told by insurance adjuster Tennessee pricing was being used for rebuilding estimates. Is that true?
There were some issues with pricing. That was very adjuster dependent. So if you do feel that it was just a price issue, if you feel that your adjustment report included all the items that it should, however, it's just the wrong price point, you can just ask your caseworker to re-review the actual file they have based upon New York pricing. You can advise them that you think it's vastly underpriced. You can provide them with some kind of documentation. So if you have a receipt for something and it shows $10 and you were paid $2, which is obviously a large difference, you can provide that to them. Or once again, you can provide them with comparables and say, look, in New York, at Home Depot, immediately after the storm, this was the going rate. This is not what I was paid, and I feel like I need my file completely reviewed for correct pricing, and they will do that for you.
I filed a supplemental proof of loss on 10/29/14. After several communications with the claims examiner, a denial letter was issued on April 10th. Under FEMA rules, I have 60 days to file for an appeal. Am I able to file the appeal and also participate in both process concurrently?
What is it?
I'm able to file an appeal and review.
You're not, this question is regarding filing an appeal from a proof of loss. You're not barred from filing an appeal at this point, but our experience is that any appeal that we filed recently, once FEMA decided to reopen this review process, they've received a letter back saying that their appeal is basically on hold and that they have the ability to just go into this review process. So you're not barred from filing an appeal, but you'll probably just get the same kickback and they'll just tell you to resubmit everything through the review process.
I bought and paid for paint and kitchen cabinets, which should be covered, but what about other expenses? Replacing yard, torn up by machinery, lifting house? No.
What is it?
Replacing yard, torn up by machinery, lifting house.
I bought and paid for.
Damages during construction.
Okay, this is with regard to payment for some outdoor shrubbery and anything in the outdoors. That unfortunately is not covered under your policy. So any trees or gardening or anything like that's not covered. And replacing yard cleanup. And additional damages, it looks like someone had damage caused to their yard when their house was elevated. Unfortunately, that's not going to be paid under the policy either. The only place you can try and get an exclusion would be on the duplication of benefit side. If you have the accurate documentation to show that you were out of pocket additional money for such and such reason, you can request a clarification from New York Rising and submit documentation to see if they can remove that from your duplication of benefits analysis.
A lot of these are New York Rising. Yeah, they're all.
Yeah, a lot of these questions are New York Rising. If anyone has a specific New York Rising question, we can take your name and information afterwards.
We have it.
We're not, I don't work for New York Rising. I just work for the school. We just wanted to give you some information about this review process. But we can definitely take your contact information and we can touch base with you sometime in the upcoming days for any assistance you need.
Just a lot of these are very specific. That's why I don't want to I don't know if they can pertain to you, but if you want to open it to just a few more questions, I'll
Yeah, do
walk
you want
around.
to just go over? We'll open it to a few more questions. Christina will come around with the microphone, and then we can go through these. So do you want to come up to one of these mics?
Do you have, I'm a little confused on duplication of benefits.
Okay.
Let's say that you were awarded $200,000 from New York Rising and your insurance company paid you less than $100,000. Now you're going to resubmit again for another review. On the 6100 form that you filled out from New York Rising, they list line by line. Now the homeowners, the flood insurance is going to do exactly the same thing. So now they come in with the prices under that or just over that? Is that considered a duplication? For the same?
The way that the duplication of benefits reads as a whole, that's something that you'd have to take on a case-by-case basis. But the question is regard to duplication of benefits paid from flood insurance just on pricing. So if flood insurance pays a certain price for an item, but New York Rising pays a different price, whether it be lower or higher, whether that would still be considered duplication. Duplication, unfortunately, is the item paid on. It's not the value of what they're paying you for. Again, I would, if you have a circumstance like that, I would just take it to your case manager and present it to them and say, look, here's the situation, here's what I feel should only be duplicated, and see if they can work with you. But there's nothing on the FEMA end or the flood insurance end that can be done to alleviate that.
We
You just have to use the mic for live streaming purposes so they can hear your questions too.
I have a question pertaining to a receipt that we turned in for kitchen cabinets to our adjustment company, which we've gotten 3 checks so far from our flood insurance company. The kitchen cabinets, well, $4,000, and that's what they paid us for. I contacted them and I told them you didn't pay us for the sales tax on that item, and it was from the original company that made the kitchen cabinets, so we're buying the exact duplicate cabinets. The shipping for the cabinets, the remove and reset on those cabinets. So we went round and round with them on sales taxes because we had other items that we provided with them, like the cost of our boiler. They paid us for the replacement cost insurance that we had on the boiler. They would not pay the sales tax. We also caught them not paying the sales tax, and it took us 15 months to get our sales tax on our contents.
I think I can just address this as a whole, and then maybe Christina will do these other questions we have. And any other personal questions, I'll be available after we finish live streaming for additional questions. But as far as sales tax, again, that was an issue that was adjuster specific. So if you don't have sales tax included in your report, which when they did analysis, they've only found a few adjusters that was connected with. I don't have that information. They're not making that public. But if you're just missing sales tax, but again, you were paid on the correct items, you can just ask your caseworker to review your file and to just ensure that sales tax is included. You're not going to have to submit anything else to them for that.
Hi.
Hi.
You spoke of a neutral person earlier at the review center. Who's deciding that that person is neutral?
We haven't been advised who the neutral is yet, but what we've been advised is that it won't be a FEMA employee. It won't be someone that had any previous connection to these Sandy claims. So
where is the person coming from?
we haven't been advised yet. As far as I know, there hasn't been one appointed. I know they've been speaking with various people. I think they were reaching out to, different nonprofit agencies, different educational institutes, anyone to see who had the correct background, like on the flood insurance program as a whole. But as far as I know, there hasn't been a neutral appointed yet. They've advised us that that will become public when they find out who that is. Christine, we'll finish these. Let's finish these questions. I'll take any other personal questions after presentation concludes live streaming. Yeah.
Yes.
Party that's going to come here and, review our process, what originally was done by an adjusting company, Now, are they going to send, who's going to be actually sending the information to FEMA to review? Because if it's the adjusters, I got a feeling that they're not really going to be able to help us at any point because we actually have to prove our case to FEMA, not them. I'm just curious, do we add to what they're going to give them or gave them? Because I just feel like that's where a large part of the issues are, assuming as also with people with engineering problems, the engineers didn't do their job correctly or they fraudulently wrote claims. So did some of these adjusters. So my question would be, and overall, as they're doing the review, are we going to be able to actually submit to this claimant person or this caseworker? Are we going to go against the adjuster company that was at our house, or how's it working?
The prior adjusters that were at your house have no relevance to what's going to happen with this review process. These caseworkers are all brand new. They all had no connection to Sandy. They're not taking them from Allstate or Travelers or any of these prior, they call them a WIO or a write your own company. They're third-party contractors. None of those people are involved. So these new caseworkers are all newly hired. They have zero connection to any files. And when you're submitting to them, they're submitting for review in full. And if you feel for some reason that there's not or there's something missing, then you have this option of the neutral. Like I said, who hasn't been appointed or released as far as we know yet. So there's no one in between you and FEMA. This is them, they're reviewing claims, and they are advising the WIOs to issue payment. The WIOs are not allowed to say we're not paying on this It's a direct order from FEMA to pay on these claims.
Okay. Do I need to resubmit all documentation previously provided regarding my claim?
You do not need to resubmit all documentation. Like I said, it's recommended that the more you submit now, it's fresh eyes. It's just making sure that you've submitted everything that you have. If you didn't make copies, if you are honestly just tired of submitting this documentation, I don't blame you. I know people have been requested to submit documentation on multiple occasions. You can just confirm with your caseworker, once they received your file, what they actually have in that file. And if that's enough for your review, then so be it. If you feel the need to submit anything additional, then you can submit anything additional you'd like.
There was a question previously. I didn't get
Yeah,
the card.
we're going to do those after.
No, not that. It was an engineering question. They received an engineer from an insurance company, but they were never provided with a report. What do they do at that point? Can they request the engineering report to be released to them?
So there was an engineering issue, but they never actually received a copy of the engineering report.
Yes.
You can request that from your insurance company. I don't know how quick the insurance companies are going to be to get you those files. But what I can tell you is that when FEMA requests those files, that report will be included in the event that it is not. And you should make your caseworker aware of the fact, I had an engineering issue. I was never previously provided with a copy of this report. I want to make sure it's in my file for review. And in the event that it's not, FEMA will be the one requesting those documents from that engineering company. They will have the information from the WIO, and they'll be able to request that. You're not required to chase down these documents.
Will SBA receive notice that I received additional flood insurance funds? And will SBA be named on flood insurance proceeds checks?
Yes, SBA, if you have an SBA loan, they will be made aware that you've received additional funds. They have systems that constantly update, similar to New York Rising. They'll always receive notification that you've received additional funds. And SBA will only be named as a payee on the check if, again, the loan proceeds directly overlap with what you've been paid from FEMA at this point. So if you get a structure payment and you have a structure SBA loan, they will be named as a payee. If you feel that you're being paid for different structural items or different contents, then that will have to be dealt with prior to the check being issued, or you'll need to make sure that SBA will sign that check over to you with no issue. That'll have to be on a case-by-case basis on your file.
Will New York Rising be named as a payee on my flood insurance proceeds check?
I know at some point this went media crazy on Facebook and everywhere that New York Rising was going to be named as a payee. They are not. So in the event there is a duplication of benefits, it is your responsibility to pay back those funds or to hold on to those funds and wait until your New York Rising file is closed out. But they will not be named on the check. So they will not need to sign off the check for you.
If I have not completed repairs and have multiple estimates from licensed and insured contractors, should I submit all estimates?
You should submit everything, anything that you have. If you have multiple estimates, maybe they have different pricing on them, maybe they cover different items. The flood insurance policy is only going to pay you for those items covered under its policy. The more documentation you can provide to them to show, look, these are the items that need to be replaced in my house. This is what was damaged by the storm. This is the price of a licensed and insured contractor who I had come to my house and complete an estimate, the better the likelihood that you'll get paid out exactly what you're owed on this re-review process. Okay, I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It really is our goal to just educate you on this entire process. I know it's been a long and frustrating road, and we at the Disaster Clinic, we're here for you. The members of, Senator Gillibrand's office, they're here for you. Your local government offices, we're all here to help you. Once we complete the taping, I can definitely take any personal questions, or we can take down your contact information and we can touch base in the upcoming days. Thank you.
Just one person about the June 12th deadline, whose ever question that is, feel free to come up here. I'm ready for you.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, do you want to tell them? Michelle? Michelle has some final remarks.
One thing to say, no, you don't need to
lawyer to do this, and for the most